The Dhamma is not neutral. In a world where everything seems to be going towards neutrality, sometimes we are finding ourselves holding the position of neutrality when it comes to the Dhamma. That is wrong. That is unwise. The Buddha teaches us methods and principles that allow us to have the capacity to see between what is right from wrong, what is wholesome from what is unwholesome, what is constructive and what is destructive. It's not a mixture of the two. It's not a mashup of the two opposites. When we meditate or when we are living our lives, living responsibly, what what we are also doing is making a stand, holding a position. When you're sitting to meditate, you hold and keep your position for as long as possible without moving. That is dedication. That is holding and making a stand for yourself. Not budging. The mind comes and moves, tries to move you, agitate your heart. You're trying to watch and observe, observing the hindrances, no matter how seductive they might become, in trying to pull you away, pull your attention away from your object of meditation. But you hold your ground, you hold your position. That is not the result of neutrality. That is applying wisdom. This requires a fearless attitude. This requires courage, which this world of ours today lacks severely. So when you're meditating, what you're doing is you're creating an oasis for yourself, truly an island for yourself. To know what is right, to know what is wrong, and then to choose your path, the path that does not bring you blame, the blameless path. That's why we practice sila, a virtuous living, where we practice precepts to cool the heart, to cool the mind, so we don't have any more remorse, any sense of guilt, any sense of inner shame for having thought, said, or done something. This already is half the mental cultivation, the meditation, which we call samadhi. This is half of the work already. But it takes courage to stand your ground and say, no matter what happens around me, I will not be pulled in to doing this, to saying this, to thinking this. We have all kinds of stories and narratives we tell ourselves. We convince ourselves to stay complacent, and soon enough that turns into complicity. We join a movement, a current that takes us to where we don't want to go, or we wouldn't have wanted to go, but our position of neutrality has dragged us into. We could not hold our ground. So the very first step to be treading on this path of Dhamma is to know what is kusala from what is akusala, what is wholesome from what is unwholesome, and start walking the path instead of thinking about the path. This often will get us to feel uncomfortable at times. Not because the path itself is difficult, but the amount of resistance that we put up, that is the problem. We might be wanting something, but that is totally different than from what is happening in our heart. There's that resistance, what Lord Buddha calls the repulsive energy, the patigha, this ill will, this vyapada, this hatred, displeasure to be doing it. But the more we get to that point, and the quicker we take a step, the faster we discover the peace and comfort that comes from not having broken that precept, from having stated what we felt needed to be stated, despite our fears. Oh, maybe I'm going to be shaking the boat a little bit if I say that, so I might as well just keep my mouth shut. Maybe I shouldn't say something, even though your heart says otherwise. I have to be neutral. No. There's a lot where the grayness, the choosing of the gray area, brings us plenty of suffering, plenty of dukkha. This is where the wisdom must be there, to know, to understand what brings dukkha and what does not. And if it brings dukkha to one party, it brings dukkha to others. For this, one of the easiest criteria to pay attention to is my mind agitated? Not just when I'm sitting to meditate, but throughout the day. Do I find myself struggling to create that sense of balance within me? And if there is, am I telling myself stories? Am I patching things? Am I trying to put Band-Aid over this dam that keeps on cracking and breaking? Is there peace? True peace. And true peace will not come from choosing the neutral position. This path is for the courageous ones. It's not for the faint of heart. And this is why it is important for us to really reevaluate our position, our understanding of the Dhamma, the Buddha's teachings. Why am I meditating? Would be a good question. Why am I choosing this path for myself? Why am I practicing metta? What is metta for me? Is it a camouflage? Is it a cover for a sense of perhaps inadequacy? Am I afraid of confrontations? Metta is never afraid of confrontations. Metta is extremely courageous. It never backs down. Metta never backs down. It stands its ground. It is not neutral. So we have to change our position often towards what we understand with this thing called loving kindness, because many people have this mistaken notion or interpretation of it. They think it's too soft. They think it's, very fluffy and all that all the time. No. Depending on the circumstances, metta will rise up to the occasion and do what needs to be done. It will always choose the wholesome from the unwholesome. It is fearless. Just like the Dhamma in the heart of a noble disciple. It is the Dhamma that makes the noble disciple fearless. The Dhamma that has been realized by this person who lives with wisdom, lives with responsibility, unafraid, not necessarily from forces outside of oneself, but primarily unafraid of the ghosts of the past, the things that would hold him or her back from taking a step forward, from choosing willfully, freely, intentionally to stay sharp. Sharp in the face of difficulties, in the face of confusion, and look at what needs to be done. Even if it feels it's going to be hard, at least in the beginning. That's where the fearlessness comes. To dislodge you, to uproot you from the mires and the dirt and the moat and all the ugliness, the stagnant energy of the past that never was satisfying in the first place. That's why you came to the Dhamma. That's why you sit unmoving. That's why you allow your heart to open up its petals to whatever may happen. So there is a choice, most certainly, that you intentionally are making. But it's not a one-time choice. It's not a one-time step that we take and we relinquish our responsibility afterwards. No, it is a step-by-step journey that needs to be taken by us. And there's a lovely term that Lord Buddha used for this. He called it yoniso manasikara, applying wise reflection, wise attention, placing the attention on the original spot, the thing that matters the most. So you are extremely intentional with life. And that's another way of understanding life to be lived truthfully and not in a haze, not in a fog, not in this sense of lifeless thing we're calling neutrality. It's becoming more of the lexicon of today's world. Neutral this, neutral that. That's a very dangerous affair. So let us draw that very sharp, clear demarcation line between what is unwholesome and what is wholesome, because the unwholesome will only bring us dukkha, even if it has a sweet taste at one edge of it, but the root of it is full of poison. Even our metta, that's disguising itself to be metta when it's not, because of our fears and habitual tendencies of not wanting to confront, not wanting to say, you know, this I don't agree with this because this is harmful. Not willing to say that. And then camouflaging that under the cover of what we think is metta is a sham, is a ruse, is a farce. It's not metta. And we know it. We feel it. Because metta is life-shaking, earthquake-making, life-changing. It brings a smile to the heart due to its life-giving properties. And that's why whenever we look at an image of Lord Buddha on a statue, the artist always has to present the image, the face of the Buddha in such a peaceful, exuding relief, contentedness throughout. And that's a true rendition. And in that state, there is a harmonious process taking place. Life is taking place. It's not dead. So let us make sure our lives have color. They're not dead. They have color. Starting with the joy that comes to the heart. But that joy does not come haphazardly or by chance or randomly. That comes by choice. We have to protect the heart. We have to protect our boundaries. We have to protect the mind. That means saying no to several different things that we were able to do, we were doing with so much comfort, satisfaction, perhaps, habits. But as we move along this path, we must decide. We must decide every step of the way as to what position am I holding I cannot be neutral and call myself someone who's practicing Dhamma. It's as simple as that. We must stand and say what is right to be right and what is wrong to be wrong, starting with ourselves. And that is living responsibly. That is living beautifully. That is living with kusala, with wholesomeness. That's why it's called Arya, noble. It is our choice, it is our willingness to live that in that fashion, in that way, not just for half a day or a few hours, but to carry ourselves with that dignity, integrity that comes from within. And it really does not care about how it may be perceived, because it is, remember the oasis, the island, it is self-sustaining. But the joys and the fruits and the wonders that it brings up within us, they don't stay with us only. It's like the fragrance of a rose, of a lotus, of a gardenia. It doesn't stay with the gardenia. It permeates everywhere. It never stays with the gardenia, with the rose. And that's another way of looking at generosity. That's another way of looking at the Dhamma, fused and become one with our lives.